Yeah, welcome to SMX Insider. We are previewing the high point round of the Pro Motocross Championship, which will be round 21 of Super Motocross World Championship for 2024. Well, the door wasn't open for 450 overall wins for as long as we maybe thought. Here we are sitting on Jett Lawrence back in victory lane, JT. We heard conflicting stories on Friday. It's worse than it sounds. It's exactly as bad as it sounds. It's better than it sounds. I think it was clear he wasn't 100%, but that was a master class. He figured out a way anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of spin going on, but it's really hard to fake those pure moments right when you get off the motorcycle. I could see how uncomfortable he was even sitting on the motorcycle at different times throughout the weekend. So for him to bounce back at whatever level of injury he was at, I think it was a pivotal moment in this championship, because if the lead had been extended, we would have a very different tone than we do sitting here this week heading into High Point.
And on similar lines, I think by 3 races and 6 motos, it's time to say Haiden Deegan is going to that next level. You never want to overreact to round 1. We didn't really see the best of Tom Vial until the end of round 2. But hey, we're now looking at a big point lead, undefeated in overalls, and 4 out of 6 moto wins for Deegan. So I don't think that's a fluke at this point.
Yeah, he's clearly been the best guy through 6 motos. I think at times he hasn't been perfect. We saw that huge crash at Hangtown, but other times this weekend in the second moto, I think he managed that race. He didn't feel like he had necessarily the pace to go up and challenge Hymas, so he settled for the second place. I think he views Tom Vial as his biggest competitor at the moment. Maybe right, maybe wrong, but when he saw Vial behind him, Hymas out with a big lead, he was able to settle for second, take another overall win, and continue to extend his points lead.
Yep, we'll get into all that, the Jett and Deegan triumphs, everyone else that was in the mix in an up and down and really unpredictable weekend for everyone, including us on the TV show, and we'll get into that as well. Should be a really fun episode, but remember, High Point is the one coming up. We'll be on Eastern time for the first time in the Pro Motocross leg of the SMX World Championship. So catch us this weekend starting at 10 a.m. with race day live coverage presented by motosport.com on Peacock and the SMX Video Pass. And then motos will start at 1 o'clock. Oh, this is awesome. Our big interview, probably overdue. Hero of both JT and I growing up, but you don't need to take it from us. Ricky Johnson, 7-time AMA national champion, an AMA Hall of Famer. And kids, this was the all-time winningest Supercross rider when he retired. Just RJ, you made the mistake. You made the mistake of recommending that Honda hire this Jeremy McGrath guy. Good and bad. And now he has that record. But we got to see you on hand at Thunder Valley. We could talk about the glory days that JT and I love to cheer for, but let's talk about today, the Lawrence brothers, today's dominators for Team Honda. What do you see from them? They ended up going 1-2.
Well, for one, I really wanted to congratulate Hunter Lawrence, because he's been through so many things, through injury, through being the big brother of the new messiah of motocross, and for him to work his way back and have a very strong, not a gimme, raced hard all day long.
For these other guys, whether it's Chase Sexton, whether it is the aforementioned Hunter, take your pick. How do they look at Jett, find a weakness, and find a way to beat him?
So if I was going after Jett or Hunter, I would say I am going to come at you like Tasmanian Devil, a combination of Bob Hanna, hate to go third person, Rick Johnson and Ricky Carmichael, and a Jeffrey Hurlings. Somebody that just goes so fast it scares you, as well as James Stewart.
I'm going to mention a kid who seems like he has that in him. What do you see from Haiden Deegan?
I saw the intensity. I really saw the intensity in the first moto out of Haiden. I was really impressed with the berms, the corner speed. He was searching for lines. I mean, Brian and his family have done a great job raising this boy to be an unbelievable racer. It's one, you can say, oh, he's this. No. You cannot substitute speed, endurance, strength, and everything that Haiden has. And I was really impressed with him in the first moto. It seemed like he got frustrated in the second moto, and maybe he realized that he had the overall or whatever, but his intensity is what we're looking for. The next generation, if somebody's going to come up and beat Jett Lawrence and Hunter Lawrence the way they're riding right now, it's going to be a Haiden Deegan style. I think Haiden realizes that he's playing a role as well. And I don't think it's cocky when you say, I'm here to kick your ass. That's my job. Because we all know that. but the one guy that steps up and does it. And what helped me is that I was willing to play the fool. If it was wearing a big hat or glasses or whatever at the Paris Supercross and stuff. And I've talked with the guys after. I love everybody that I raced with, but at the time they hated it. They're like, this prick's getting all this attention and all the different stuff. And I just played with it.
Looking at the racetrack and things like that, I think as a Californian, you always felt you had to show the East Coast fans what they didn't get to see at Anaheim. So what's your history and what's High Point like?
Well, what I loved about High Point was Big Dave. He wasn't like I'm going to say a typical promoter, which they're not anymore. The guys that promote the races, the Richies and, everybody back at Unadilla and stuff, they work really hard. But he was there. He was a rider. He went out there and you would see him on the track. If there was a muddy spot, he was trying to figure something to make it better. He would change the track, do whatever he needed to do. When we went back there, we used to have like a Saturday practice, and I would take my practice bike and just go flog it in the mud because I'm like, well, I have to know what this mud feels like and all the different stuff. And Dave, and I was young, I was 17 in the 250 class against Hansen.
You got us fired up. JT, you got anything else for RJ? I know we want to talk to him for 2 more hours just as fans, but we're just fired up in the racing right now, right?
Yeah, man, I would just say come around more often. I will shake your hand anytime, no matter what, and I'll always recognize you, I promise.
30-second board time. This topic you probably did not expect on this show. This has nothing to do with racing motocross at Thunder Valley, but it does have something to do with the sport that we cover. There's a charity softball game run by the NFL's Kenny Moore, and JT, he invited a couple of Supercross motocross racers who I don't think know much about playing softball. Kind of funny that way.
No, that's great. And I think the crossover that we've seen a few times this year, which it's, strangely enough happened to be the NFL, but to get these athletes into different disciplines, and when you throw a charity like this behind it, where it's for, the best causes, and, we're already so involved with St. Jude Children's Hospital. There's so many things so much good that we can do. So it's cool. These guys were not participating in the Pro Motocross Championship race this weekend, so why not lend their time to something worthwhile?
Thunder Valley, I think, is an underrated round. I think as an all-around, from the venue, the look, the track itself, how it races, and the community we have there in Colorado, it's actually one of the better rounds. I think the only reason it doesn't, to me, ring out, JT, as every fan's first choice when they say great races, it doesn't quite have the mega deep history, but we are now 20 years in consecutively of racing at this location.
Yes, as you mentioned, very underrated. It's the most scenic race we have of the year, that mountainous backdrop. The weather usually cooperates, maybe not so much this year. We had a couple issues this year, but yes, if you're looking to add a new round to your travel schedule, could not recommend Thunder Valley anymore.
Now, let's get into that weather at Thunder Valley. JT, literally, we're about to go on the air at 1 o'clock local time, and we hear about 5 minutes before that we're in a half-hour delay. And normally that's not a huge deal, and that was due to lightning, but ordinarily not a huge deal. We're on Peacock and the SMX Video Pass. We can move things around. But we were scheduled for 2-hour window on NBC, which you cannot move. So that led to some scrambling for everyone.
Yeah, I think the team behind the scenes here really deserves a round of applause. The moving of things around, the cooperation, both from the NBC side, from MX Sports, from Feld Entertainment, from our production team, everybody had to really pull together to get this job done. A
breakout ride, a new contender, perhaps, maybe even title contender here in the 250 class.
Yeah, I think Chance Hymas is in exactly that, breakout mode. Confidence-wise, I think it really proved to Honda that they made the right decision. And I know that everybody who's been behind him for a long time through the ups and downs, that was a win for a lot of different people, not only Chance Hymas.
Like his mom, who we saw in tears, and his dad we're very familiar with. He's at all the races. Chris, he's a great guy. And also the Lawrence brothers, JT, who have a very close relationship, not just as teammate, but he rides at their facility. That was really cool to see the emotions pouring out for everyone. And we'll continue this family topic. So we're headed to High Point this weekend. High Point was once a legendary race, kind of in the vein of Redbud, which has the July 4th weekend. High Point used to take place on Memorial Day weekend, which means most people have an extra day off on Monday. And it was a really big, I'm going to use the word party atmosphere at the event. Now, for the benefit of the whole series and the industry, to get a few more West Coast rounds in May and move High Point back was the right move. But I do feel like for a while, High Point suffered by losing its traditional date It's kind of rebuilt itself now around the Father's Day theme, which again we'll have this weekend. And we know how motocross works. JT, you as well as anyone, the integration of fathers and the athletes.
Yeah, it is a great weekend, right? Because you simply just can't really do this sport without your family behind you. It is such a family sport at its core. And for many of these riders to get to celebrate Father's Day at this round is a really cool thing.
Now it's time to talk Haiden Deegan, who has maybe the most well-known father in the game. And their whole plan, and this has been going for a long time, Haiden Deegan has been on the radar as a 50cc rider all the way through. It is coming to fruition. Although I will say, I think if you had quizzed people a few years ago, JT, on what would Haiden Deegan be like as a pro, I think people are expecting flash, style, this grit, this fitness, this dog in him. That has really become his calling card, and man, is it really paying off now in motocross.
And I always say in pro motocross, you simply cannot fake the fitness, the ability to handle the heat, all those things that pro motocross asks, you cannot fake.
Let's go to the standings here in the 250 class. So Deegan pulling away. It feels like it's been closer than this when we look at the 250 motocross standings. Yeah, he's won a lot, but there's been some battles. Look at this. Almost a full moto lead, 23 points.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's been domination, and that's the scary thing. If you are Tom Vial, let's throw Chance Hymas into that equation now as well, and of course Levi Kitchen. I think all of them are like, hey, we've been in the fight. It hasn't been like a runaway, but then you look at the points, and then you get a little bit nervous because, as you mentioned, we're almost up to a moto, and Haiden Deegan is slowly but surely building up a huge lead here. So by the time one of these other riders kind of finds their rhythm, it might not matter. Haiden Deegan might have such a big lead by that point that he can start managing this series. Now, we're not there yet, but if we continue with this trend, they're going to look up at halfway and realize that they're a full race down worth of points, and then what?
JT, can you imagine what it's like to ride with Jett Lawrence every day and then to try to keep your confidence up and believe, no, I could also be champ? That's got to be a challenge.
Yeah, it is. And I get it. I think it probably is the right approach to winning championships, is just like an NFL quarterback, right? Never too high, never too low. But the one thing I would say is one day he's going to look back and say, you know what? There were really good days where I was enjoying all the success. Maybe allow yourself a moment to enjoy that before you start thinking about getting back to work on Monday.
And you can see it in the standings. We'll show you the 450 motocross standings here. Now, the gap is not large, and I think that's another reason why Hunter's not trying to get ahead of himself. This is far from, oh, I'm in position to win this title, but he has the red plate. And the other thing is you can see Jett has moved up now in the standings from 6th coming in. We'll also show you the SMX standings, and Lawrence, Jett continues to have a lead. Hunter has moved up to 5th, tied with the idle Cooper Webb. So that's the story there from a numbers perspective. Now we have to go to the other side of it. I think we all thought, maybe we all didn't think that Hunter Lawrence would be holding the red plate 3 races into his 450 motocross career. I think we all thought Chase Sexton had turned a corner and was going to be unbelievable again in Thunder Valley. What happened?
The one silver lining and the positive that I think he has to take away from this is in that second moto, he was very aggressive, was able to make passes. He was going to the front. Without that mistake, I think he wins that moto. I really do. And if I was around him, if I'm his coach, his father, Kier, anybody, I'm telling like, hey, first moto, we weren't there. But the second moto, that's what we need. We need that aggression. We need that speed. Maybe just, time your passes a little bit better, but that's exactly where you want to be.
And then finally, we talk about this statement win from Jett Lawrence. He's not just a grip it and rip it sprint. He uses it only when he needs it. And he had just enough to get this done.
Yeah, he showed a lot of resiliency this weekend, and that's the word I kept thinking about, because it would have been very easy to start worrying about Chase Sexton, to worry about his injury, let all those negative thoughts creep in, but he was able to overcome all of that.
SMX Facts time. We bring in our staff statistician, Clinton Fowler. Well, we talked about an epic Chase Sexton ride last week, not quite as epic this time, and then ended up being the Lawrence brothers battling to the end. Actually, you and I met for dinner after the race. You had some startling stats on Jett and Hunter late in the day.
Yeah, Jason, absolutely incredible ride by the Lawrence brothers. Incredible battle. They set the fastest 2 laps on the absolute last lap of the moto of the entire day when the track is the roughest. And that's normally the time when people start to fade. We normally see a 5 to 10% slowdown in the lap times. And instead, these guys are amping it up a second or two. What's even more impressive, JT, it's 4 seconds faster than anybody else on the track at the time. That was over Jason Anderson. And it was 7 seconds faster than the guy they were just battling, Justin Cooper, for the lead.
Now we have to talk about this Sexton follow-up ride. So how costly were these crashes? We can assume from a confidence, mental momentum side, but what about from numbers?
Yeah, I mean, a valuable amount of points here lost. The 6.5 could have been a 4.2, just the positions he was in at the time of the crashes. That's 7 points, Weege. So definitely a costly day. The thing that really sticks out to me, though, JT, is he had been fastest in 3 of 4 motos leading up to Thunder Valley. In Thunder Valley, he was 4th fastest and 5th fastest in the motos. And it was just a tick off of what he had been so far this season.
But once he had that big crash on the opening lap,
and Sexton goes flying and down.
I think that second moto, he was about to show us that same speed he had through the first 2 rounds.
Now, there's been so much drama in the 450 class, kind of slowly, surely, quietly, which is not what you would think the way he would do it. But Haiden Deegan is mathematically really proving to be the man in this 250 class with that 23-point lead. What are you seeing in the numbers for Deegan?
Yeah, Weege, he had been incredible with the speed through the first couple of rounds, but it's the starts lately that have kept him in it and had him up front early, and he hasn't had to rely on that speed. In the last 4 motos, he's gone first, and second at the white line at the start, which is just absolutely incredible. Whereas in Pala, he was 8th in both motos at the white line, and then had just incredible speed for the entirety of the moto. Now, I want to be clear, he's had speed, obviously, throughout. You can't win without it. It's a relative statement here.
38, the rider to watch, the rider to beat. Can they do it? Let's go.
And he's had just that incredible speed. How is anybody going to contend against him as we move forward?
It's going to be tough, right? If you kind of dot all your I's and cross all your T's, you don't really give a window to anyone. You have the speed, you have the starts, you have the fitness. That's kind of how championships are made. So if he keeps this up, what else can you do? That's why he has a 23-point lead going into round 4.
Yeah, and although he rides wide open, he doesn't have that much of a reputation as a crasher. I know he had a big one in Hangtown, but Clinton, this is a kid who was already planning how he was going to get up while he was helicoptering through the air. So I think you're right. He's going to be tough to beat, but that's why we run the races. We'll see what happens at High Point, and we'll see you at the races yourself soon.
You got it, guys. Thanks.
All right, High Point Raceway this weekend, about an hour south of Pittsburgh, right on the West Virginia-Pennsylvania state line. JT, you've raced here a million times. Did you race here even as a kid, like even before the pro days? What's the track like?
It's great, and to me, the biggest question here will be how do the riders manage the change in terrain? Because you always hear the riders, they go to this East Coast swing and they're like, oh, everything I thought I knew about my motorcycle was wrong. I have to change everything. So both this weekend at High Point and the next round at Southwick, watch for those riders be pulling in the mechanics area. You're going to hear comments in the interviews about changes to the motorcycle all day. We're just way off on settings. That's because we're crisscrossing the country. We're going to completely different terrain, lots of ruts, softer dirt. Maybe there will be weather in the forecast. We don't know. But that's, to me, is the biggest change that we're going to see.
Yeah. Also, we haven't seen the super deep ruts that we sometimes see at these opening rounds. I don't think Hangtown was as rutted as it has been in the past. Colorado, definitely not. So do you think this is going to lead to even more variance? Because you're going to get deep ruts at High Point.
Yeah, last year I thought Thunder Valley gave these guys a little insight. It was so soft and so ruddy, right? So they kind of knew how their bikes would respond going to a track like High Point. There's been none of that this year. It's been much harder, a much harder surface at all 3 rounds than they're going to see this coming weekend at High Point. So watch for that. Again, we don't know who it's going to strike the hardest, but think about the guys that are the most sensitive. Maybe a Chase Sexton who's never raced this track on a KTM before. Watch for those things to play a role this weekend.
And if you want to watch, here's how you do it. It'll be Peacock and the SMX Video Pass all weekend long. 10 a.m. is Race Day Live qualifying coverage presented by motorsport.com. That's an hour show. And our racing begins at 1 o'clock Eastern. It'll be 4 straight hours of coverage of the motos. And then we have a halftime show and a post-race show we'll roll right into. And also cool, we're going to capitalize on some of the momentum that we had from the NBC airing We will be a 2-hour re-air encore on Sunday on USA Network. So again, if you have friends that don't follow this all the time, just tell them to check it out on Sunday. And those 2 motos on USA should be really fun to watch. That's our show. For Jason Thomas, I'm Jason Weigandt. We are headed to High Point. Then there'll be a weekend off, Southwick. These tracks are rich with history, so you don't want to miss these. These will really be fun races to watch.